He walked into the diner at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, and my whole world stopped. I was holding a tray of drinks when I saw his face, and every single thing I had run from for 8 months came crashing back in one terrible second. He didn't yell, he didn't even stand up. He just looked at me with those cold blue eyes and smiled like he had already won. I thought leaving him was the hardest thing I would ever do, but I was wrong. The hardest thing was what happened next. My name is Ava, and this is my story. I was born in a small town called Fairview, Ohio. The kind of town where everyone knows your father's name before they know yours. My parents were good people, hardworking. My father worked at the auto plant until his hands were more callous than skin, and my mother cleaned houses for the rich families on Maple Drive. They taught me that love was supposed to be gentle, that marriage was a partnership, that a man who loves you will never make you afraid to come home. I wish I had listened better. I met Derek when I was 22 years old. He was handsome in that dangerous way, like a storm you know you should run from, but you just stand there anyway, watching the sky turn green. He had blue eyes that could go warm like summer honey or cold like a frozen lake, and I never knew which version I would get. That was part of the thrill in the beginning, the unpredictability. He would show up at my apartment with flowers on a Tuesday for no reason, and then disappear for 2 days without a text. He called me obsessive when I asked where he had been. He said I was suffocating him, and like a fool, I believed him. We got married after only 8 months. My mother cried at the wedding, but I thought they were happy tears. Looking back now, I realized she was crying because she saw something I refused to see. Derek put a ring on my finger and whispered in my ear that I belonged to him now, not that we belonged to each other, that I belonged to him. I laughed it off. I told myself he was just old-fashioned, romantic, even. The first time he hit me, I was making spaghetti. The sauce had splattered on his white shirt, a brand new shirt he had bought for a job interview that he never actually went to. He was sitting at the kitchen table, and I was stirring the pot, and I felt the blow before I heard it. His hand across my face. The wooden spoon flew out of my grip and clattered on the floor. I stood there frozen, my cheek stinging, while he looked at his own hand like it had acted on its own. "Look what you made me do," he said. "You know I hate messes." I apologized. I actually apologized. I cleaned the shirt. I made a new batch of sauce. And I never told a single soul. That was the beginning of the long, slow drowning. The apologies, the promises. The weeks of sweetness followed by an explosion over something so small I couldn't even remember what started it. A dish left in the sink. A laugh that went on too long with a male coworker. A return home from the grocery store 3 minutes later than I had said I would be. By the time my daughter Lily was born, I had stopped making friends. I had stopped calling my parents as often. I had learned how to apply concealer to bruises and how to laugh at Derek's jokes even when my ribs ached. I told myself it was for Lily, that she needed a father, that I could manage him, that if I was just better, quieter, smaller, he would go back to the man I married. But the man I married never existed. That was the hardest truth to swallow. Derek was always the man who hit me. He had just been patient enough to wait until I said yes to the ring. The night I left, I had $23 in my wallet and a diaper bag packed with 2 changes of clothes for Lily. Derek had gone out to a bar with his friends, and I knew I had maybe 4 hours before he came home. I had tried to leave twice before. Both times he found me. Both times the punishment was worse than anything I could have imagined. But this time, I didn't go to a motel. I didn't go to a friend's house. I didn't go to my parents because Derek knew where they lived. I went to the bus station and bought a one-way ticket to a city I had never visited. Nashville, Tennessee. I had no plan, no job, no place to stay. I had a 2-year-old daughter and a black eye hidden under sunglasses and a heart so full of terror I could barely breathe. The bus ride took 9 hours. Lily slept most of the way, her little head on my shoulder, and I stared out the window at the dark highway, and I prayed to a God I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. Please, please don't let him find us. Nashville was loud and bright and full of strangers. I walked off that bus with my daughter on my hip and no idea where to go. A woman at the station saw me crying and handed me a pamphlet for a shelter called the Rose House. She didn't ask questions. She just pointed me toward a bus that would take me there. The Rose House changed everything. It was a small building painted yellow, with a garden in the back where the women who lived there grew tomatoes and marigolds. The director was a woman named Gloria who had been in our shoes 20 years earlier. She understood the flinch. The way we all jumped at loud noises. The way we whispered our own names when we first arrived, like we had forgotten we were allowed to speak at full volume. Gloria helped me get a job at a diner called Millie's. It was a 24-hour place on the south side of Nashville, the kind of diner where the coffee was always stale and the floor was always sticky and the customers called you honey whether you liked it or not. I didn't care about any of that. I needed money. I needed to save for a deposit on an apartment. I needed to prove to myself that I could stand on my own 2 feet. Working at Millie's was hard. My feet hurt. My back ached. Some nights I would get off a 10-hour shift and go back to the shelter and lie awake staring at the ceiling while Lily slept in the crib beside me, and I would wonder if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. Derek had money. Not a lot, but enough. He had a house. He had a car. He had a family who would have taken our side no matter what he did. And here I was, serving pancakes to truck drivers at 3 in the morning, counting quarters to buy diapers. But I was free. That was what I kept telling myself. I was free. I had been at Millie's for 8 months when the day happened. It was a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday that starts like any other, with gray light coming through the window and the sound of Lily laughing at a cartoon on the shelter's old television. I dropped her off at the daycare that Gloria had arranged for the working mothers, and I walked the 15 blocks to the diner because the bus fare added up and I needed every dollar. The morning shift was slow. I wiped down counters. I refilled ketchup bottles. I listened to Darlene, the other waitress, talk about her grandson's baseball game. Darlene was 62 years old and had been working at Millie's for 20 years. She smoked menthol cigarettes on her breaks and called everyone sweetheart. She was the first person in Nashville who made me feel like I wasn't invisible. Around 11 o'clock, the lunch rush started. Truck drivers, construction workers, a few office people grabbing a quick sandwich. I put on my best smile, the one I had practiced in the shelter's bathroom mirror, the one that said I am fine, I am normal, nothing bad has ever happened to me. I was carrying a tray of drinks to table 7 when I saw him. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. I had hallucinated Derek before, in those early weeks after I left. I would see his shape in a crowd or hear his voice in a man's laugh, and my heart would stop, and then I would blink and he would be gone. My mind playing tricks on me, the fear making ghosts, but this was not a ghost. Derek was sitting in the booth by the window. The same booth where I had served a young couple that morning, the ones who held hands over their coffee and looked at each other like the world had been made just for them. Now Derek sat there alone, his hands flat on the table, his blue eyes fixed on me with an expression I could not read. The tray in my hands began to shake. The glasses rattled. A drop of soda spilled over the rim of a cup and landed on my wrist, cold and sharp. I had changed my hair. I had stopped wearing makeup. I had lost weight. I had changed everything about myself, but he had found me. Of course he had found me. He had always found me. The diner seemed to go silent. I know it didn't really. I know the fryers were still hissing, and the radio was still playing country music, and Darlene was still chatting with the cook through the window. But in my head, everything stopped. There was only Derek, and there was only me. I set the tray down on an empty table. I don't remember doing it. My body moved on its own, like it had learned to do in the years I lived with him. Walk quietly, don't make sudden movements, don't show fear. Fear makes it worse. I walked to his booth. Each step felt like wading through cement. My uniform felt too tight, my name tag. My stupid name tag with my real name on it. Ava, he knew my name, he had always known my name. Hello, Ava, he said. His voice was calm. Too calm. The calm of a man who has already decided what he is going to do. The calm of a man who has spent 8 months searching and has finally found what he was looking for. Derek, I said. My voice came out like a whisper. I cleared my throat and tried again. Derek, you can't be here, he smiled. That smile used to make my heart flutter. Now it made my stomach turn over like a boat in a storm. Can't I? He said. I'm a customer. This is a public place. You're a waitress. I'm ordering food. Seems pretty simple to me. He picked up a menu and pretended to read it. His hands were steady. My hands were shaking so badly I had to press them against my thighs to still them. You need to leave, I said. I will call the police. He looked up at me then, and his eyes went cold. That frozen lake cold. The cold that meant I was in trouble. The cold that meant I would pay for this later. You want to call the police on your husband? He said. The father of your child. The man whose name is still on your marriage license? Go ahead, Ava. Call them. Tell them I sat down in a diner. See how fast they show up. He was right. I knew he was right. I had no restraining order. I had never filed a police report. I had never told anyone the truth about what he did to me, not in writing, not officially. I had just run, and running leaves no paper trail. What do you want? I asked. I want my wife back, he said. I want my daughter back. I want to go home. His voice cracked on the word home. For just a second, I almost believed him. Almost. That was the thing about Derek. He could make you believe he was sorry. He could make you believe he had changed. He could make you believe that this time, finally, he would be the man you needed him to be. But I had believed him too many times, and I had the scars to prove it. No, I said. The word came out stronger than I felt. It surprised both of us. Derek's smile flickered. Something dark moved behind his eyes. No, he repeated, like he had never heard that word before, like it was a foreign language he did not speak. No, I said again, you are not taking me home. You are not taking Lily. You need to leave this diner right now, or I swear to God, I will scream so loud every person in this place will know exactly who you are. Derek stared at me for a long moment. The diner noise started to come back. I could hear Darlene calling out an order for a cheeseburger deluxe. I could hear a baby crying somewhere in the back. I could hear the jukebox playing a Patsy Cline song. Then Derek stood up. He was taller than me. He had always been taller than me. He stepped close, too close, and I felt my body lock up the way it always did when he was near. The way it had learned to do to survive. You think this is over. He said, so quiet I could barely hear him over the diner noise. You think you can just leave and I'll forget about you? You're mine, Ava. You were mine the day I met you. And I will find you again. I will always find you. He walked out of the diner. The bell on the door jingled. I stood there for a full minute, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. Then I walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and threw up in the toilet. Darlene found me 10 minutes later, sitting on the bathroom floor with my back against the wall, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. Honey, she said, kneeling down in front of me. Honey, who was that man? My husband, I said. That was my husband. Darlene didn't ask any more questions. She just pulled me into her arms and held me while I sobbed, and when I finally stopped shaking, she helped me wash my face and put on fresh lipstick and go back out to the floor. You're safe here, she said. He can't touch you here, but I knew he could. I knew he could touch me anywhere he wanted, because Derek didn't believe in consequences. Derek believed in possession, and I had taken something that belonged to him. I finished my shift that day because I didn't know what else to do. I served coffee and pancakes and grilled cheese sandwiches. I smiled at customers. I pretended my hands weren't trembling. And every time the bell on the door jingled, my heart stopped. When I got back to the shelter that night, I went straight to Lily's room. She was asleep in her crib, her thumb in her mouth, her little chest rising and falling. I stood there for a long time, just watching her breathe. She was the reason I left. She was the reason I would never go back. But she was also the reason I was terrified. Because Derek didn't just want me, he wanted her too. And a man who would hurt his wife would not hesitate to hurt his child. I called Gloria into the room and told her everything. The diner, Derek, the threat. Gloria listened without interrupting, her face calm and steady. When I finished, she took my hands in hers. You did the right thing, she said. You told him no. That took courage. It didn't feel like courage, I said. It felt like survival. Sometimes that's the same thing, she said. Gloria helped me file a police report the next morning. The officer who took my statement was a young woman with kind eyes and a tired face. She asked me questions I didn't want to answer. How many times did he hit you? Did he ever use a weapon? Did he ever threaten to kill you? I answered each question in a flat voice, like I was reading from a script. When she asked me if I wanted to press charges for the threats he made in the diner, I said yes. For the first time in 3 years, I said yes. But pressing charges takes time. And Derek was not a patient man. The next week, I saw him again. I was walking Lily to the daycare, pushing her in a stroller I had bought at a thrift store for $8. It was a sunny morning, the kind of morning that tricks you into thinking everything is okay. And then I saw his car. A silver sedan, parked across the street from the daycare. The windows were tinted, but I knew it was him. I turned around and walked the other way. I didn't look back. I walked 6 blocks to a different daycare, one I had never been to before, and I begged them to take Lily just for the day. The woman at the front desk saw the panic in my eyes and said yes without asking questions. I called Gloria from a payphone. He found the daycare, I said. He knows where Lily goes. Gloria told me to come back to the shelter. She told me to stay inside. She told me she would make some calls, but I couldn't just hide. I couldn't sit in that yellow house with the marigolds and wait for Derek to decide when he would come for us. I had spent 3 years waiting for him to change, waiting for him to apologize, waiting for the next blow. I was done waiting. I went back to Millie's that afternoon. I know it sounds crazy. I know you're probably thinking, Ava, why would you go back to the place where he found you? But Millie's was mine. It was the first thing I had that was just mine. My job, my tips. My regulars who called me by name and asked about my daughter and left me quarters for the jukebox. I wasn't going to let Derek take that from me too. The diner was quiet when I walked in. The afternoon lull. Darlene was sitting in a booth, folding napkins into triangles. She looked up when I came in and her face softened. "You okay, honey?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I'm here." I put on my apron. I tied my hair back. I walked to the coffee machine and started a fresh pot. And then I saw it. A piece of paper, folded in half, tucked under the sugar dispenser at table 7, Derek's table. My hands shook as I unfolded it. The handwriting was his. Sharp. Angry, the letters slanted to the right like they were running from something. "You can run, but you can't hide. I know where you sleep. I know where you work. I know where she goes during the day. Come home, Ava. Come home and I'll forget this ever happened. Don't make me do something we'll both regret." I read the note 3 times. Then I walked to the back office and showed it to Millie, the owner. Millie was a tough woman with gray hair and a voice like gravel. She had survived 2 divorces and a battle with cancer, and she did not scare easily. She read the note, and her face turned hard as stone. "You call the police again," she said. "Right now, and then you're going to stay in my apartment above the diner until they sort this out. I have a spare key. You and Lily will be safe there." "Millie," I said, "I can't ask you to do that." "You didn't ask," she said. "I'm telling." So that night, Lily and I moved into the small apartment above Millie's diner. It was 1 room with a fold-out couch and a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom so small you could barely turn around. But it had a lock on the door. 2 locks, actually. Millie had installed a deadbolt after a break-in years ago. I checked those locks 10 times before I went asleep. The police came the next day. 2 officers this time, a man and a woman. They took the note as evidence. They asked me more questions. They told me they would do their best, but that Derek hadn't technically broken any laws by leaving a note. Threatening language, they said, but not explicit. Not enough for an arrest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake them and say, "How many times does he have to threaten me before you do something? How many bruises? How many broken bones? How many women have to die before you believe us?" But I didn't scream. I thanked them. I walked them to the door. And then I sat down on the fold-out couch and I cried until there were no tears left. The next few days were a blur of fear and routine. I worked my shifts at the diner. I kept Lily close. I looked over my shoulder constantly. Every man with blue eyes made my heart stop. Every silver sedan made me duck behind a building. I was living in a state of constant alert, the kind of alert that wears you down until you can barely remember what it feels like to be relaxed. And then, 6 days after Derek left the note, he came back to the diner. It was a Friday night. The dinner rush. The place was packed with families and couples and old men eating pie at the counter. I was running from table to table, my tray balanced on my shoulder, my feet aching in my non-slip shoes. I had just delivered a burger to table 4 when I heard the bell on the door jingle. I looked up, and there he was. But this time, he wasn't alone. Derek was standing in the doorway with a woman I had never seen before. She was older, maybe 60, with short gray hair and a kind face. She was wearing a pantsuit and holding a leather folder. Behind them stood 2 police officers, the same 2 who had come to the apartment. The diner went quiet again. I could feel every eye in the place turn to me. Ava, Derek said. His voice was loud, purposefully loud. He wanted everyone to hear. Ava, I'm here with a social worker. We're here to take Lily. The tray slipped from my hand. It hit the floor with a crash that sounded like a gunshot. Plates shattered. Food splattered. Everyone in the diner flinched. What? I whispered. The woman in the pantsuit stepped forward. She held up the leather folder. Inside was a stack of papers. My name is Margaret Hodges, she said. I'm a caseworker with the Department of Children's Services. Mr. Brooks has filed an emergency petition for custody of your daughter, citing concerns about your mental stability and your ability to provide a safe home. Until a judge reviews the case, Lily will be placed in temporary custody with her father. No, I said, no, that's not true. I'm stable. I have a job, I have a home, I stopped. I didn't have a home. I had a borrowed apartment above a diner. I had a shelter before that. I had no lease. No utility bills in my name. No proof that I could provide for Lily the way Derek could with his house and his car and his bank account. And Derek knew that. He had planned this. He had waited 8 months, not to find me, but to build a case against me. To make me look like the unstable one, the unfit mother. The woman who had abandoned her husband and taken his child across state lines without his permission. I looked at Derek. He was standing with his hands in his pockets, his expression calm and sad, like he was the wronged party, like he was the victim. You did this, I said. My voice was shaking. You did this to hurt me. He shook his head. I just want what's best for Lily, he said. You left Ava, you took her without telling me. You've been living in shelters and sleeping on couches. That's not a life for a child. The social worker nodded like Derek had made a reasonable point. The police officers stood with their arms crossed, watching me like I might do something crazy. I wanted to tell them the truth. I wanted to lift up my shirt and show them the scars. I wanted to tell them about the night Derek broke my wrist and then drove me to the emergency room and told the doctor I had fallen down the stairs. I wanted to tell them about all the times he had locked me in the bathroom, all the times he had taken my phone so I couldn't call for help. All the times he had whispered in my ear that if I ever left, he would make sure I never saw Lily again. But I couldn't because the words wouldn't come. They were stuck in my throat, buried under years of silence and shame and fear. I had spent so long hiding what he did to me that I had forgotten how to say it out loud. Where is Lily? The social worker asked. Daycare, I whispered. The one on 4th Street. The social worker turned to the police officers. Please escort Mr. Brooks to pick up his daughter, she said. I'll stay here with Miss Brooks. No, I said again. Please. You can't take her. She's all I have. The social worker looked at me with something that might have been sympathy. Miss Brooks, she said quietly, this is just temporary. You'll have a chance to present your side to a judge. But right now, I have to follow the law. Derek walked out of the diner with the police officers. He didn't look back at me. He didn't need to. He had already won. I collapsed onto the floor. Right there in the middle of the diner, in the broken plates and the spilled coffee, I collapsed. Darlene ran to me. Millie ran to me. Customers stared. Someone called out, should we call an ambulance? But I couldn't hear any of it. I could only hear Derek's voice in my head, from 6 days ago, from the booth by the window. You're mine, Ava. I will always find you. He had found me, and now he had taken Lily. The next hour was a blur. The social worker asked me questions. I answered them in a monotone. Yes, I had left Derek. Yes, I had taken Lily. No, I had not filed for divorce. No, I had not filed for custody. Yes, I was living above a diner. No, I did not have a permanent address. The social worker wrote everything down in a little notebook. Then she gave me a card with her number on it and told me to call her on Monday to schedule a meeting. Then she left. Millie helped me upstairs to the apartment. I sat on the fold-out couch and stared at the wall. Lily's stuffed rabbit was on the pillow, a little gray rabbit with floppy ears. She couldn't sleep without it. I picked it up and held it to my chest, and I screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw and my voice gave out. I screamed because I had survived 8 months of freedom and Derek had still found a way to destroy me. Darlene came up after her shift ended. She sat beside me and held my hand and didn't say a word. She didn't tell me it would be okay. She didn't tell me to be strong. She just sat there in the silence with me, and that was exactly what I needed. The next morning, I called Gloria. I told her what had happened. She was quiet for a long time, and when she spoke, her voice was heavy. Ava, she said. You need a lawyer? Right now, I know, I said, but I don't have any money. There are lawyers who work for free in cases like this, she said. Domestic violence survivors. I know a woman, her name is Rachel. She used to volunteer at the Rose House. I'll give you her number. Rachel answered on the second ring. She was young, maybe 30, with a voice that sounded like she had never been afraid of anything in her entire life. She listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, she said 3 words that made me cry all over again. I believe you. Rachel met me at the diner that afternoon. She brought a paralegal with her, a quiet man named Tom who carried a briefcase and took notes on a laptop. We sat in the back booth, the one where Derek had sat, and Rachel asked me to tell her everything. Not just about the custody petition, everything, from the beginning, so I told her. I told her about the first time Derek hit me, about the broken wrist, about the locked bathroom, about the nights I slept with a chair propped under the doorknob, about the time he held a knife to my throat and told me he would kill me if I ever looked at another man, about the time he broke my phone and smashed my glasses and then apologized by buying me a new phone and new glasses like that made it all better. I talked for 2 hours. Tom typed the whole time. Rachel asked questions, gentle questions, questions that helped me remember details I had tried to forget. When I finally stopped talking, my voice was hoarse and my eyes were swollen, and I felt like I had been hollowed out from the inside. Rachel reached across the table and took my hand. Ava, she said, we are going to fight this. Derek filed an emergency petition based on lies. He said you were mentally unstable. He said you had a history of erratic behavior. He said you had threatened to hurt Lily. None of that is true. I shook my head. None of it is true. Then we prove it, she said. We get your medical records. We get statements from the shelter. We get Darlene and Millie to testify about your work ethic and your stability. We show the judge who you really are. But what about Lily? I asked. What happens to her until then? Rachel's face softened. She's with Derek right now. But I'll file a motion for temporary custody on Monday. We'll ask for supervised visitation for Derek. We'll tell the judge the truth about his history of violence. What if the judge doesn't believe me? I asked. Rachel looked me right in the eyes. Then we make him believe you. The weekend was the longest of my life. I didn't work. I couldn't. Millie told me to take all the time I needed, that my job would be waiting for me when I came back. But I couldn't stay in the apartment either. The silence was too loud. Lily's empty crib was in the corner. Her stuffed rabbit was still on the pillow. Every time I looked at it, I started crying again. I walked. That's what I did. I walked all over Nashville. I walked past the shelter, past the daycare, past the park where I used to take Lily to feed the ducks. I walked until my legs ached and my feet blistered and I couldn't feel anything anymore. On Sunday night, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something made me press the green button. Hello, I said. Ava, it was Derek's voice. Low and smooth. Ava, I want you to listen to me. I almost hung up, but I didn't. I stood in the middle of the sidewalk, my phone pressed to my ear, and I listened. Lily is fine, he said. She's sleeping in her old room. She asked for you. I told her you were on a trip, a long trip. What do you want, Derek? I want you to drop the custody case, he said. I want you to sign over your parental rights. And I want you to disappear. I felt the words hit me like physical blows. You're crazy, I said. I'm not signing anything. Then I'll destroy you, he said. His voice was still calm, still smooth. I'll tell the judge you abused her. I'll tell him you abandoned her. I'll tell him you're a drug addict. I'll tell him whatever I have to tell him to make sure you never see her again. You have no money, Ava. You have no home. You have no power. I have all of it. So do yourself a favor. Walk away. I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I walked back to the diner, up the stairs, into the apartment. I sat on the fold-out couch and I held Lily's stuffed rabbit and I thought about what Derek had said. Walk away. I had walked away before. I had walked away from my home, my town, my life. I had walked away from everything I knew, and I would do it again if it meant keeping Lily safe. But walking away now wouldn't keep her safe. It would give Derek exactly what he wanted. It would let him win. And men like Derek, they don't stop when they win. They just find someone else to destroy. I called Rachel. It was almost 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, but she answered on the first ring. He called me, I said. Derek. He told me to sign over my parental rights. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Did you record it? No, I didn't think. That's okay, she said. We'll get a restraining order first thing in the morning. He's not allowed to contact you. That's harassment. He's not going to stop, I said. You don't know him like I do. He's not going to stop until I'm dead or until Lily is his. Then we make sure neither of those things happen, Rachel said. Ava, listen to me. You are stronger than you know. You survived him for 3 years. You escaped. You built a new life. You are a good mother. And we are going to prove it. Monday morning came gray and cold. I put on my best clothes, a black dress I had bought at a thrift store for $5, and I walked to the courthouse with Rachel and Tom. The courthouse was a big stone building with columns and flags and security guards who made me empty my pockets. I had never been inside a courthouse before. It smelled like old wood and floor wax and fear. Derek was already there. He was sitting on a bench in the hallway, wearing a suit I had never seen before. His hair was combed. His shoes were shined. He looked like a successful businessman, not a man who had broken his wife's wrist and called it an accident. Beside him stood a woman in a sharp gray suit, his lawyer, I assumed. She was looking at me with an expression that made my skin crawl, like I was a bug she was about to step on. Lily was not there, thank God. I don't think I could have stood to see her in Derek's arms. The hearing was in a small courtroom on the 3rd floor. The judge was an older man with white hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked tired, like he had been doing this job for too long and had seen too many broken families. Rachel stood up first. She told the judge about Derek's history of domestic violence. She showed him photos of my bruises, the ones I had taken in secret and hidden in a shoebox under my bed. She showed him the note Derek had left at the diner. She showed him the police report I had filed after Derek showed up at the daycare. Then Derek's lawyer stood up. She told the judge that I was a liar, that the photos could have been taken at any time, that the note could have been written by anyone, that I had no proof Derek had done any of the things I accused him of. She said I was unstable. She said I had a history of mental illness. She said I had abandoned my husband and kidnapped our child. She said I was living above a diner with no permanent address and no steady income. She said I was a danger to Lily. And then Derek took the stand. He cried. I watched him cry, real tears streaming down his face. He told the judge how much he loved his daughter, how much he missed his wife, how he had tried everything to get me to come home, how he had begged me to get help for my problems, how he only wanted what was best for Lily. He was so convincing. He was always so convincing. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the witness stand on legs that felt like jelly. I raised my right hand and swore to tell the truth. And then I looked at Derek. He was sitting at the defense table, his face wet with tears, his hands clasped in front of him like he was praying. And I felt something I had never felt before. Not fear, not anger, not sadness. I felt done. I turned to the judge and I started talking. I told him about the first time Derek hit me. I told him about the broken wrist. I told him about the knife. I told him about the bathroom door. I told him about the years of silence and shame and fear. I told him about the night I ran. I told him about the bus ride. I told him about the shelter. I told him about Millie's diner and the waitress job and the apartment above the restaurant. I told him about the note. I told him about the phone call. I told him about Derek's threat to destroy me, and then I told him about Lily. About the way she laughed when I tickled her belly. About the way she said mama in her sleepy voice every morning. About the stuffed rabbit she couldn't sleep without. About the future I wanted to give her. A future without fear. A future where she never had to learn how to apply concealer to bruises. I talked for 30 minutes. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. Even Derek's lawyer wasn't moving. The judge took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He looked at Derek. He looked at me. He looked at the stack of papers on his desk. I'm going to make a temporary ruling today, he said, pending a full investigation by the court. Miss Brooks, you will retain custody of your daughter. Mr. Brooks, you will have supervised visitation twice a week, to be monitored by a court-appointed supervisor. I am also issuing a restraining order against Mr. Brooks. He is not to contact Miss Brooks except through her lawyer, and he is not to come within 500 feet of her residence or her place of employment. Derek stood up. His face was red. Your Honor, he said. That's not. She's lying. The judge held up his hand. "Sit down, Mr. Brooks, or I will hold you in contempt." Derek sat down, but he was looking at me, and in his eyes I saw the cold, the frozen lake cold, the cold that meant this wasn't over. The hearing ended. Rachel hugged me. Tom patted my shoulder. I walked out of the courthouse into the gray morning, and I took the first full breath I had taken in days. But I wasn't free. Not yet, because Derek was still out there. And men like Derek, they don't lose gracefully. That night, I picked Lily up from the temporary foster home where she had been staying, a nice family on the east side of Nashville. The mother was a social worker who had volunteered to take emergency placements. She handed Lily to me, and Lily wrapped her little arms around my neck and said, "Mama, I missed you." I held her and I cried. And then I took her back to the apartment above the diner, and I put her in the crib, and I gave her the stuffed rabbit, and I watched her fall asleep. And then I sat by the window with the lights off, watching the street below, waiting for Derek's silver sedan. It didn't come that night, or the next night, or the night after that, but it came. 2 weeks later, I was working the night shift at Millie's. It was 3 in the morning. The diner was empty except for a truck driver nursing a cup of coffee in the corner and a teenage couple sharing a milkshake in the back booth. Darlene had gone home at midnight. Millie was in the office doing paperwork. I was wiping down the counter when I heard the bell on the door jingle. I looked up. Derek walked in. He was wearing a hoodie with the hood up, but I knew his walk. I knew the way he moved, like he owned every room he entered. His hands were in his pockets. His eyes were on me. I reached for the phone under the counter. The one Millie had installed after the first note. The one with the speed dial to 911. "Don't," Derek said. He was standing at the counter now, just a few feet away. "Don't call them, Ava. I just want to talk. You're not supposed to be here," I said. My voice was steady. I was proud of that. "There's a restraining order." "I know," he said, "I know, but I had to see you. I had to tell you something. Tell me and then leave," I said. My hand was on the phone. Derek pulled something out of his pocket. A piece of paper. He unfolded it and slid it across the counter toward me. I looked down. It was a letter from Derek to the judge, a confession. I read it once. Then I read it again. "I did it," the letter said. "I hit her. I broke her wrist. I threatened her with a knife. I locked her in the bathroom. Everything she said was true. I lied in court. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I looked up at Derek. His face was different. The cold was gone. The anger was gone. He looked tired, old, small. "Why?" I asked. "Because I'm tired," he said. "I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of hurting you." I went to a therapist, Ava, after the hearing. I told him everything, and he said I have a problem, a real problem, and if I don't get help, I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose Lily. I'm going to lose myself. I didn't know what to say. I had dreamed of this moment for years. Derek apologizing, Derek admitting the truth. But now that it was happening, I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt sad. "What do you want me to do with this?" I asked, holding up the letter. "Give it to the judge," he said. "I already gave a copy to my lawyer. I'm going to sign over my parental rights. I'm going to check myself into a treatment program. I'm going to try to get better." I stared at him. "Why now?" I asked. "Why not 3 years ago? Why not before I had to run? Why not before I spent 8 months afraid to leave my own apartment?" Derek looked down at his hands. "Because I wasn't ready," he said. "Because I didn't think I had a problem. Because I thought you were the problem. I blamed you for everything. For making me angry, for making me hit you, for making me into the monster I became." He looked up at me and his eyes were wet. "I was wrong, Ava. I was so wrong. And I'm sorry. I know sorry isn't enough. I know it doesn't fix anything. But it's all I have right now. I didn't forgive him. I couldn't. The scars were too deep. The fear was too fresh. But I believed him. For the first time in 3 years, I believed that he was telling me the truth. I took the letter. I put it in my apron pocket. And I walked around the counter and stood in front of him. "You need to leave now," I said. "And if you ever come near me or Lily again, I will use this letter and everything else I have to put you in prison. Do you understand?" He nodded. "I understand." He walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the handle, his back to me. "I did love you, Ava," he said quietly. "In my own broken way. I did love you." Then he walked out into the night, and the bell on the door jingled, and I watched him go. I never saw Derek again after that night. He signed over his parental rights. He checked into a treatment program. He sent me letters sometimes from the facility telling me about his progress. I read them, but I never wrote back. I didn't need to. I had already said everything I needed to say. The judge granted me full custody of Lily. The restraining order became permanent. Derek's family stopped calling. His friends stopped asking. He faded out of my life like a bad dream you can't quite remember when you wake up. I stayed at Millie's for another year. I saved every penny I could. Darlene taught me how to budget. Millie let me stay in the apartment for free while I got on my feet. And one day, I walked into a community college and enrolled in classes, business administration. I wanted to manage a restaurant someday, maybe my own. Lily is 7 years old now. She doesn't remember Derek. She doesn't remember the fear or the running or the shelter. She remembers the yellow house with the marigolds. She remembers Darlene teaching her how to fold napkins. She remembers the jukebox at Millie's and the way the truck drivers used to give her quarters for candy. I am a manager now. At a different restaurant, a nicer one with white tablecloths and a wine list. I have my own apartment. 2 bedrooms. A balcony where I drink my coffee in the morning and watch the sun come up over Nashville. But I still think about that day. The day my husband saw me working as a waitress. I think about the way the tray shook in my hands. The way the soda spilled over the rim of the cup. The way Derek sat in the booth by the window with his hands flat on the table like he owned the whole world. I think about what happened next. The custody battle, the letter, the confession, the silence that followed. And I think about the woman I was before all of this. The woman who apologized for the spaghetti sauce. The woman who believed she deserved the bruises. The woman who was afraid to use her own voice. She is gone now. I left her behind in that diner, on the floor with the broken plates and the spilled coffee. I left her there and I walked away, and I never looked back. My name is Ava, and this is my story. If you are a woman who is living through what I lived through, please know that you are not alone. Please know that you are stronger than you think. Please know that there is a yellow house somewhere with your name on it, a diner, a bus ticket, a future. You just have to take the first step. The rest will follow.